We're criminalizing journalists who report on issues that make the government look bad. The arrests of Don Lemon and Georgia Ford are shocking and likely unconstitutional, but this isn't the first time that it's happened, and it isn't the first time that actions like this were challenged as unconstitutional from the very beginning. We hear the phrase, "those who don't learn from history are doomed to repeat it," but history doesn't just repeat, it echoes. Sometimes that echo is soft, like speaking into a room with tall ceilings where you barely hear it come back. Other times, it's like speaking into the Grand Canyon where it comes back louder over and over again. For many people, when you think of journalists being suppressed, you automatically think of 1930s and 1940s Germany. And while that comparison is relatable, the history of suppressing journalism and dissent has been here in the United States all along. Just 30 years after we became a nation, President John Adams signed the Sedition Act of 1798. That law criminalized publishing false, scandalous, or malicious statements about the U.S. government, but in practice, it targeted newspaper editors, political opponents, and ordinary citizens who criticized the Federalist leaders. It was never about national security, it was about silencing opposition, because most of the people targeted under the act supported Thomas Jefferson, who was running against Adams in the very next election. The Sedition Act expired in 1801 when Jefferson took office. Everyone convicted under was pardoned and fines were repaid. Jefferson called it unconstitutional because it violated the First Amendment. Now let's jump forward to the first loud echo. During World War I, Congress passed the Espionage Act of 1917. Now that was originally meant to protect military secrets, but just 1 year later, it was expanded to the Sedition Act of 1918. And much like the Sedition Act of 1798, this version made it illegal to criticize the government, the war, or the military. And who did they target? Journalists, socialists, pacifists, even union organizers. They weren't accused of sabotage or violence. They were accused of discouraging loyalty through their opinion. Now that Sedition Act was also repealed. And then another echo, 20 years later, we get the Smith Act of 1940. Now it wasn't called sedition this time around, but functionally it was the same. It made it illegal to advocate overthrowing the government or to belong to groups accused of doing so. And proof of action wasn't required. Belief was enough. Because Germany wasn't the only country afraid of ideas in the 1940s. And now we're back in present-day America where journalists are being arrested for documenting protests. And this time, instead of passing a new sedition law, authorities are using the Freedom of Access to Clinics Interest Act, or the FACE Act, a law passed to prevent violence or physical obstruction at abortion clinics and places of worship, not to criminalize journalism. And in this case, it was used to arrest a journalist who was repeatedly seen and heard on camera identifying himself as press, not participating in the protest. We know history echoes. The question is now, how many times do we have to hear it before we listen?